When people talk about Dark Souls, the first thing they usually mention is the difficulty, the bosses,
No!
the deaths,
What the fuck?
the frustration. And yes, Dark Souls is hard. But the longer I've sat with the series, the more I realize that difficulty isn't why these games stay with people for so long. What makes Dark Souls special isn't that it punishes you, it's that it's honest. Dark Souls doesn't pretend the world is fair. It doesn't pretend heroes always win. And it definitely doesn't pretend that things last forever. Instead, it tells stories about fading kingdoms, forgotten legends, broken heroes, and people desperately trying to hold on to something that was never meant to last. And strangely, that's exactly why it feels so real. At the center of Dark Souls is a single idea. Everything ends. The world began with the first flame, a source of light that brought disparity into existence. Heat and cold, life and death, light and dark. From this flame rose powerful beings who would shape the world, including Gwyn, the Lord of Sunlight. Gwyn defeated the ancient dragons and built an age of fire, a golden age of gods and civilization. But like any flame, the first flame wasn't meant to burn forever. Eventually, it began to fade. And when that happened, Gwyn made a choice that would define the entire history of the world. Instead of accepting the end of his age, he sacrificed himself to link the fire and prolong it. At first glance, that sounds heroic. A king giving everything to save his world. But Dark Souls slowly reveals something much more complicated. The world wasn't meant to remain in the Age of Fire. By forcing the flame to continue burning, Gwyn didn't truly save his age. He delayed its ending. And in doing so, he trapped the world in a cycle. A cycle of fading fire, desperate sacrifice, and temporary renewal, over and over again. And that idea feels strangely familiar, because how many times in our own lives have we done something similar? How many relationships have we tried to force to keep going long after they were already fading? How many jobs, ambitions, or versions of ourselves have we held on to, even when deep down we know they weren't meant to last? Sometimes the hardest truth to accept is that something beautiful is ending. And sometimes the more desperately we try to keep it alive, the more we damage it. Gwyn couldn't accept the end of his age, so he burned himself alive to preserve it. And the world has been paying the price ever since. One of the most powerful moments in Dark Souls happens quietly in Anor Londo, a city that first appears radiant and divine. After defeating Ornstein and Smough, the players encounter what seemed to be the goddess Guinevere, a symbol of warmth and prosperity. But if you strike her, the illusion disappears, the sunlight fades, the warmth vanishes, and suddenly the beautiful city is revealed for what it really is. Empty, cold, abandoned. It's one of the most subtle moments in the series, but also one of the most powerful, because it reminds us that even the greatest civilizations can be built on illusions. Gwyn wasn't the only one who feared the end of the Age of Fire. Another powerful figure tried to stop it in her own way, the Witch of Izalith. Instead of sacrificing herself like Gwyn, she attempted something even more ambitious. She tried to recreate the first flame. But the first flame wasn't something that could simply be copied. The experiment failed. And what it created instead was the Chaos Flame, a force that twisted everything it touched. The witch herself became the monstrous bed of chaos, barely recognizable as the being she once was. But the tragedy didn't stop with her. Her children suffered even worse fates. Chaos Witch Quelaag was fused with the massive spider, transformed into a demon guarding the ruins of their fallen city. Her sister, the Fair Lady, tried to ease the suffering of Blighttown's infected inhabitants by absorbing their poison into herself. The act of compassion left her blind, frail, and dying. Another daughter, Quailan, remains hidden and silent, protecting what little remains of her family's legacy. Then there is Ceaseless Discharge, a monstrous demon who endlessly mourns beside the corpse of one of his sisters. Even the witch's sons were twisted into horrific-looking demon fire sages. An entire family destroyed by a single desperate attempt to hold on to something that was already fading. The Witch of Izalith wasn't trying to destroy the world, she was trying to save it. But in trying to recreate what was already dying, she created something far worse. For all of its gods and ancient powers, Dark Souls is ultimately about humanity. And perhaps no character represents that better than Manus. Manus is often described as the father of the abyss, a monstrous being of darkness and rage. But beneath that title lies a tragedy. Manus was once human. When his grave was disturbed, something inside him awakened. And what emerged wasn't simply darkness, it was emotion, grief, loneliness, desperation. The abyss in Dark Souls isn't just a place, it's emotional chaos. Manus isn't evil, he's overwhelmed. His tragedy is that his pain had nowhere to go, and so now it consumed everything around him. In a world like this, hope feels fragile. But that's exactly what Solaire of Astora represents. While kingdoms collapse and gods fade away, Solaire searches for his own sun, a symbol of purpose and meaning. But even hope can become dangerous. If the thing you're searching for becomes your entire identity, losing it can break you, and Dark Souls understands that. Hope is beautiful, but it's also fragile. Another character whose story reflects this is Knight Artorias. History remembers Artorias as the knight who defeated the Abyss, but when we finally meet him, we learn the truth. Artorias didn't defeat the Abyss, he was consumed by it. The legend survived, but the man behind the legend did not. By the time we reach Dark Souls 2, the tragedy of the world feels different. It isn't explosive anymore, it's tired. Kingdoms rise and fall so many times that people barely remember why they began. Characters like King Vendrick wander empty halls surrounded by the ruins of decisions that once seemed meaningful. Sometimes tragedy isn't dramatic, sometimes it's just slow decay. By Dark Souls 3, the world is nearly gone. Ash covers everything, and yet even here, the series still finds moments of humanity. One of the most powerful comes from Yorm the Giant and Sigurd of Katarina. Yorm once ruled over humans despite being a giant, and those humans feared him. So Yorm made a promise. If he ever became a threat to the people he ruled, someone would have the power to stop him. To ensure that promise could be kept, Yorm formed two legendary swords capable of killing him. Storm Rulers. One for his people, and one for his closest friend, Sigurd. When Sigurd finally confronts Yorm, the moment isn't triumphant, it's quiet. Because this isn't a battle for glory, it's a promise being kept. Another tragic figure from Dark Souls 3 is the Nameless King. A warrior so thoroughly erased from history that even his name was removed. He once was a god of war, but when he sided with the dragons, the ancient enemies of Gwyn, his father stripped him of his title and erased him from history. And yet he still stands at the peak of the world. It raises a haunting question. How many people have shaped history only to be forgotten entirely? At the very end of time, there is Slave Knight Gael, a warrior who has wandered the dying world searching for the Dark Soul. When we find him, everything else is gone. Kingdoms, civilizations, even time itself. But Gael keeps going, not for glory, not for recognition, but because the mission is all he has left. And the persistence, that refusal to stop, might be the most human thing in the entire series. Which brings us back to Gwyn. When we fight Gwyn at the end of the first Dark Souls, we aren't fighting a god, we're fighting what remains of one. A burnt-out king swinging desperately in the ruins of the kiln of the First Flame. But in Dark Souls 3, something strange happens during the fight with the Soul of Cinder. During the second phase, the music changes. A familiar piano melody begins to play, Gwyn's theme. The Soul of Cinder begins fighting differently, faster, more aggressive, almost like the warrior Gwyn might have once been. And I've always had a theory about that moment. When we first fight Gwyn in the first game, we were fighting the end of his story. But in that second phase, it feels like we're finally facing Gwyn as he might have once been. Not the ruined king, but the legend, the myth, the god history remembers. Dark Souls resonates with people not because it's difficult. Life is already difficult. It resonates because it understands something fundamental about the human experience. Things fade, people fail, legends crumble, but the struggle still matters. And maybe that's the final lesson the series leaves us with. Gwyn tried to hold on to an age that was ending. The Witch of Izalith tried to recreate a flame that couldn't be recreated. Gael walked through the end of the world chasing a purpose that consumed him. And yet, through all of it, the player keeps getting back up, trying again, moving forward, even when everything around them is falling apart. Maybe that's why Dark Souls means so much to so many people. Because beneath all the monsters and ruined kingdoms, it's a story about us, struggling, failing, but continuing anyway. Anyways, that's gonna do it for me, guys. I know it's been a while since I've posted, but I'd like to get more into it, so please let me know any video ideas or games that you want me to play. And I hope you guys have been having a great day. I will see you in the next one. Love you. Bye.